Welcome to the Shurley English Workshop Series, designed to present topics and various teaching techniques to enhance your skills as an educator. Today's webinar will focus on a tender topic in classrooms around the nation. I'd like to discuss what is required to build your students into competent, confident communicators. The title of today's webinar is Writing for Life, an Action Plan for Success. First, I would like for you to consider this question. Do you feel adequately prepared to teach the valuable skill of writing in your classroom? Do you have an action plan for teaching writing? While writing and reading are often viewed as interconnected, there is an apparent disparity in the amount of research about teaching writing. For many teachers, it has often been one of the most challenging subjects to teach. I know it was for me too. When I first started teaching, yep, that's me. If someone would have told me to teach the steps in the writing process the way Shurley English teaches it, and then just repeat the process, my students and I would have been much more competent and confident writers. Here's why. It comes down to practice. Repetition is how you master anything. Let's take a step back to see how we as teachers actually view the subject of writing. Why do we teach it in our classrooms? To answer this question, we must first zoom out to see the wider perspective. Have you heard the expression, "You can't see the forest for the trees"? See, many of us have become too close to all of the details in teaching writing, like making sure our students know the rules of our language and how to construct paragraphs and essays, that some of us have difficulty remembering the real purpose for teaching writing. Writing is about communication. And there are two terms I'd like you to become very familiar with. In fact, write them down and teach them to your students. The first term is communication. Communication is the spoken or written exchange of information between people. Being able to communicate effectively is perhaps the most important of all life skills. The second term is language. Language is the system of words and the methods of combining them that people use to express thoughts and feelings to each other. As teachers, our long-term goal is to use language competently to communicate thoughts and ideas in both speaking and writing. The ability to express your thoughts and ideas for any purpose competently and confidently is so powerful. This is the forest, my friends. This is why we teach writing. We teach children writing strategies, planning, and organization because it benefits them for the rest of their lives. So, we must not lose sight of the forest, the big picture. We need to teach developing writers the power in owning their language and the value of writing for all purposes. Allow me to show you an action plan for success. See, in order to become competent and confident in anything you desire, it's necessary to follow a plan that will lead you to success. This action plan applies specifically to Shurley English. The first part of the action plan is to build competence. Competence means having the knowledge and skills to do something well. To acquire knowledge, students must learn the concepts, principles, and information about the subject through education or training. Students must also learn the skills necessary to use knowledge proficiently. Skills are the things about a subject that allow you to perform certain tasks with proficiency. The second part of the action plan is to build confidence, and there's only one requirement necessary: practice. Self-assurance in one's own abilities is the feeling of confidence, and to gain it, students must invest their time practicing the knowledge and skills they have learned. As the teacher, you must provide ample opportunities for them to do so. Teaching students to become competent, confident communicators means helping them build knowledge, skills, and practice in language arts. Shurley English is dedicated to helping students and teachers develop the knowledge, skill, and practice necessary to become competent, confident communicators. See, each feature in the curriculum helps students lay the foundation for writing. Since the concepts are spiraled throughout the curriculum, The detailed instruction and consistent practice in grammar skills, writing, speaking and listening, and reading give students the tools to step into the writing process with confidence. The knowledge, skill, and practice you provide using the Shurley English curriculum sets students up for a successful writing experience by teaching them how to work through the writing process. The 6 steps in the writing process are pre-writing, rough draft, revising, editing, final paper, and publishing. Following these basic steps, students learn to organize their thoughts and expand them into sentences, paragraphs, and essays. It is so important for your students to understand that writing is a process, and a process takes time. According to Merriam-Webster, a process is a series of actions that produce something or that lead to a particular result. When you take the time necessary to work through each of the 6 steps without rushing, your students will begin to see the value in producing quality writing pieces, which can open the door to deeper exploration and discovery. As the teacher, you will begin to see how consistent practice in the writing process sets them up to write for all purposes. Are you starting to see the forest, the bigger picture? Let's take a brief look at the steps involved in the writing process. Shurley English teaches students that writing is a valuable process, and each step of the writing process has its own set of requirements. To meet those requirements, writing checklists are provided to help students apply concepts effectively. Students will be provided with a pre-writing checklist, rough draft checklist, revising checklist, editing checklist, final paper checklist, and a publishing checklist. Step 1 in the writing process is pre-writing. During this step, students learn to gather and organize their ideas. Here's a glimpse of what the pre-writing checklist looks like. Students must first decide how they want their writing to affect the reader, and who their primary reader will be. Knowing the purpose and audience is important to determine before writing begins. They need to decide if they are going to describe something, tell a story, explain, persuade, entertain, or compare things. See, the purpose for the writing determines the type of writing. The pre-writing checklist will help students recognize their audience next. After that, students will move to the next step on the checklist and choose their topic. The guided questions in the checklists help students stay organized and engaged throughout each step. This pre-writing step encourages students to brainstorm for ideas and to think about the possibilities for main points to discuss. Then, students can pick the topic that they think they can best develop. As the pre-writing checklist continues, students learn to narrow their topic before gathering and organizing their details. The writer must determine what they want to say about their topic and narrow their focus to one idea. Then, they will brainstorm to gather details that develop their main points. As they gather information and details about their topic, the students will use a graphic organizer to organize their ideas on paper in a visual way. Students learn to spend time generating and organizing their ideas, which will make the next step of the writing process even easier. Students learn to transition from step 1 of the writing process into step 2, where they will write a rough draft. During this phase of the writing process, students use ideas from their graphic organizer to write the rough draft. A rough draft is the first attempt at writing ideas generated using a graphic organizer in complete sentence form in an organized and logical way. Students will learn to follow the rough draft checklist as they compose their first writing attempt. The first 4 items on the rough draft checklist will teach students how to organize their rough draft. Number 1 instructs them to write with a pencil on notebook paper. Number 2 instructs them on what should be included in the heading of their paper. In number 3, students are taught to skip the next line between the heading and the beginning of their writing. Number 4 teaches students to skip lines between their writing so they will have built-in space available for revisions and edits in the next steps of the writing process. They are also instructed about the format of their writing. Every good writer knows that the rough draft is never the best draft, so they don't worry about mistakes during this step. They will make improvements later. Number 5 in the rough draft checklist focuses on the effective traits of writing. These traits are emphasized as students begin to write their rough draft. The first trait is ideas. Students will transfer the ideas from their pre-writing map into complete sentences, which will include the details that support their main points. The second trait is organization. Students are taught to develop an engaging introduction, a powerful body, and a strong conclusion. Each paragraph they write should have a clear topic sentence, with their sentences and paragraphs unfolding in a logical order. Students are taught to use transition words to connect their ideas and give their writing flow. The third trait is word choice. Students are taught to improve the content of their writing with precise nouns and verbs and vivid adjectives and adverbs. They are taught to use prepositional phrases to add more details and description. Writing trait number 4 is voice. Students are taught how to express their unique writing voice through their choice of words. They need to consider their purpose and audience, so they use appropriate words and expressions. The fifth trait of effective writing is sentence fluency. Students are taught to keep their readers' attention and help them to focus on important ideas by using a variety of sentence types. Varying the length of sentences will assist them in emphasizing important ideas. Also, as students learn the different sentence patterns, they will give their writing variety. The sixth trait of effective writing is conventions. Here, students will focus on using correct capitalization, punctuation, spelling, homonyms, plural forms, subject-verb agreement, and grammar. Clarity and organization are major goals during this step of the writing process. Shurley English helps students write their rough draft by providing them with an outline for their paragraph and essay. Utilizing transition words helps to connect thoughts together while they organize their ideas and give their writing flow. Shurley English teaches a transition word jingle to help students learn and memorize transition words. Transition words help students connect their ideas throughout the different parts of the writing piece. From the introduction to the main points, and from the supporting sentences to the conclusion, transition words are a key component used by writers in all types of writing. Now that the rough draft has been developed, students will learn to revise it. It's important for them to understand that revision is the third important step in the writing process. In this step, students will learn how to strengthen the content of their writing by making better word choices and improving their sentence fluency. Students will learn to follow the revising checklist to improve their writing by focusing on each of the effective traits of writing. First, they will learn to look back at their ideas to decide if they need to add or delete any details. Then, they will check for any needed improvements in the organization of their introduction, body, and conclusion. Next, they will check to make sure their writing makes sense by focusing on their word choices. Students learn to replace any weak words with more precise ones. The next effective writing trait they must assess during revision is voice. Students will learn to check if they have used the best choice of words to express their unique personality. The next step on the revision checklist requires students to check for sentence fluency. Remember, students will make sure they have kept their readers' attention by using a variety of sentence types. The checklist will require that students make their revisions in the blank spaces on their rough draft. After revision, students will move immediately into step 4, editing the rough draft. Students will follow the editing checklist to correct mistakes in the conventions of writing. Don't forget, conventions are one of the effective traits of writing. The conventions include capitalization, usage, punctuation, spelling, and grammar. When students find an editing mistake, they will learn to simply circle it and write the correction above it. Since revising and editing go hand in hand, each writing lesson incorporates a revising and editing schedule. The schedule includes a time for individual revising and editing, partner revising and editing, and finally peer evaluation. Stay with me as we discuss the fifth step of the writing process, the final paper. During this step, students will learn to compose a neat, corrected copy of their writing piece for the purpose of publishing or sharing it. Don't forget, students will be provided with a final paper checklist to guide them through the steps for writing their final copy. They will also be given a student writing rubric to help them keep the effective traits of writing in mind as they review their work. The Shurley English curriculum includes student writing rubrics for each type of writing. Students will check their writing to see if they've met the requirements for each section. Teachers, you will have your own rubric for each writing genre. The rubric will help you authentically monitor a student's learning process and develop and revise a lesson plan. They provide excellent assessment opportunities. Of course, using the rubrics during your writing conferences can help you show each student their writing successes, as well as any areas where they may need to concentrate to improve their writing. Now, let's return to the final paper checklist. Once a student has completed number 5, using the student rubric to make a final check of their paper, they will put their pre-writing map, rough draft, and the final paper they have written in their final paper folder to be graded. Let's keep moving along. A story or an essay isn't complete until it has a reader, and that leads us into the 6th step in the writing process, publishing. During this step, students will share their writing with others. The publishing checklist will help students know what to do in order to share their writing with others. An oral presentation is a natural way to share writing. To support students in building confidence in communication, guidelines for an oral presentation are included in our curriculum. Students are given several ways to publish their work. Research shows that when students know that their writing will be read by someone other than their teacher or a family member, they will put more effort into the process of writing. See, when students have the tools to write a basic 3-point paragraph, you can teach them how to work through the writing process to construct a 3-paragraph essay. An essay contains an introduction, body, and conclusion, just like the paragraph. Even though the same elements of the paragraph are contained in the essay, the structure changes. Here is one way to make this structural change. The first paragraph contains the introduction. The second paragraph has the body of the writing, including the main points and supporting details. The third paragraph concludes the writing piece. Students will repeat the writing process every time they develop a piece of writing. Step 1 is always pre-writing. Notice how this student used the pre-writing map to generate and organize ideas for a 3-paragraph essay. During step 2 of the writing process, students will use a sentence outline to help them move ideas from the pre-writing map to the rough draft. The outline will provide a step-by-step guide to write each sentence of the introduction, body, and conclusion of their 3-paragraph essay. Then, students will continue to follow the steps of the writing process to revise, edit, write a final paper, and publish their 3-paragraph essay. From there, Shurley English teaches the writing process in such a logical, sequential way that students can easily learn to expand their 3-paragraph essay into a 5-paragraph essay. To do this, all they have to do is add a few more details. With the help of this graphic organizer, you can see that the introduction is still the first paragraph. The conclusion is still the last paragraph. But the body of the paragraph has been expanded so that each main point now commands its own paragraph. The same pre-writing map is used for the 5-paragraph essay. Students will simply follow the organizational structure of the sentence outline as they transfer their information from the pre-writing map to their rough draft. As students develop their 5-paragraph essay, they will follow the 6 steps in the writing process as usual. Students will pre-write, write the rough draft, revise, edit, write a final paper, and publish their writing. As you can see, Shurley English equips students with all of the right tools to become a successful communicator early in their educational career. Now, Imagine what your students must feel like when their writing toolbox is not quite full of the tools they need to work through each step in the writing process. What happens when they don't have the knowledge and skills they need to navigate through the different genres of writing, like descriptive, persuasive, or a narrative writing piece with dialogue? You and I both know that that can be very overwhelming and maybe even scary to some of them. As their teacher, I also know that it can be overwhelming and frustrating to you to know that you are teaching what you are required to teach, and you're often getting subpar writing pieces from many of your students. You may be asking yourself, what's the solution? Here are my 2 suggestions. First, dive deeper into your Shurley English Teacher's Manual. And second, trust the process that the Shurley English curriculum has established. According to Merriam-Webster, a process is a series of actions that produce something or that lead to a particular result. Always remember that learning to write and ultimately to communicate effectively is a skill that develops over time. The key component to growth is following the action plan for success. Knowledge plus skill times practice equals competence and confidence. As teachers, it is our obligation to stay committed to teaching and repeating the steps in the writing process. See, an opportunity is only an amount of time in which something can be done. It's a chance. An obligation is something one is bound to do, a duty, a promise, a responsibility, or a commitment. As teachers, it is our obligation to give students ample time to practice the steps so they can develop their writing skills. Once students have the chance to learn how to work through the writing process in the various genres, it's imperative to continue to provide them with opportunities to practice writing for all purposes. This is where the subject can get a bit puzzling. It is expected that teachers prepare their students to be able to shift between the different types of writing so that they can write for any and all purposes. Yes, that is the long-term goal set for the budding writer. Well, here's the deal. There are no shortcuts. After we lay the foundation, we must stay on the path and invest time in writing practice. That's right. Investing time in writing practice is vital to the growth of your students. Research from the Learning Agency Lab found that classrooms are falling short in one major area. They found that students are still not getting the proper amount of writing practice needed to satisfy employers. In fact, research shows that students across the nation struggle to produce writing that meets college and career expectations. In 2019, 41% of students who took the ACT, the American College Testing Exam, did not score well enough to meet readiness benchmarks for a college-level English composition class. Also, employers find less than half of college grads to be proficient writers. This doesn't even account for the students who don't attend college. Once again, what do we do to help our future leaders? It's simple. Allow more time for writing practice. Don't shy away from assigning some writing homework. At this stage in the game, consistency is what matters most. If you're teaching Shurley English, you have the ticket to consistency and proficiency. The curriculum has often been mislabeled as a grammar program, when in fact, it is clearly all about teaching children how to write. Grammar is just one of the features we use to build the foundation of writing. From journal and creative writing to specific instruction in the different genres and detailed instruction on report writing, there are numerous opportunities to offer your developing writers in Shurley English. One unique opportunity in the curriculum to practice writing for all purposes is called Discovery Time. These activities ask your students to pack their bags for an adventure in discovering enriching information about animals, people, and places, and then write about them. Discovery Time is found in levels 1 through 8, each stamped with a different age-appropriate theme. Discovery time opens the door to a student's imagination and allows them to broaden their knowledge base by exploring places, animals, and various people they might not have considered on their own. They will be able to practice the skills they've learned in grammar, skills, and writing throughout the Shurley English curriculum to explore and think through topics or defend a position. I recognize that your classrooms are very busy and finding time for extra writing practice can be difficult. But enriching activities like Discovery Time are simply one more chance to give your students the writing practice they need to become competent, confident communicators. These Discovery Time activities can be individual work that your students do in your classroom or at home. Since you've been teaching them how to work through the writing process, they will feel more confident working independently on a writing activity like the ones found in Discovery Time. Discovery Time activities will ask students to do a little bit of grade-level research to complete the activity or writing task. Here, you can see the Discovery Time lesson in Level 1 is on camels, and in Level 2, the lesson is on cheetahs. Basic information about each animal has been provided to spark some interest in the student. Then, the activity asks the student to draw or trace a picture of the animal and write their favorite fact about it. Also, notice the student note and student tip. It invites them to research the animal further by using other resources. As the teacher, have some appropriate books on the topic for students to explore. In Levels 3 through 6, students get the opportunity to learn about blue whales, the ladybug, as well as the famous creator of Mickey Mouse, Walt Disney. There's also a chance in Discovery Time for these students to research information about comets, famous authors, and sports. In these levels, students are asked to do a bit more research and include their findings in a paragraph. Look under the Explore heading. It asks the student to find some photos of blue whales. Then, based on the pictures, it asks them to write a paragraph describing what a blue whale looks like and draw one. Then, students are encouraged to use other resources like the suggested books, encyclopedias, or the internet to find the answers to specific questions to include in their writing. In Level 7, students pack their bags and try to figure out clues that lead them to learning all about the 50 states in the United States of America. For each state, there are creative activities that encourage students to research, write, and present their discoveries. When Discovery Time is a part of the lesson, students will see an image that looks like a license plate. It's called a clue plate. Let's see what students are asked to discover in clue plate number 3. On the clue plate, there are 2 clues. Let's read clue 1. All that glitters is not gold, but in this state, the gold does glitter in a very special building. The building has also been a safe place for items such as gold, the Declaration of Independence, the Articles of Confederation, the Constitution, and Lincoln's Gettysburg Address, among others. Now take a look at the discovery questions. What is the name of this important building? In which city and state can this building be found? Again, we encourage students to use different resources to find the answers to the clues. Do you know the answer to clue 1? It's okay if you don't. I didn't either. It's Kentucky. Follow me to clue 2. A delicious delicacy hails from this state. The main ingredient of this tasty cuisine is a diamondback rattlesnake. The dish is called diamondback poppers. Look at the discovery questions. Which state brags about this unusual appetizer? Which states border this state? I bet you know the answer to this clue. The state is Arizona. In the back of the Level 7 book, you will find a section dedicated to the Discovery Time clue plates that coincide with the clue plates in the lessons. There are also fun activities that correspond with each state for the students to complete. For example, here are the activities that go with the states that we just discovered. Take a look at activity number 1. I'm going to read the first activity for Kentucky. Kentucky is home of one of America's most popular horse races, the Kentucky Derby. The Derby has a long and remarkable equine history. Create a list of all the Kentucky Derby winners throughout its history. Present them on a poster with accurate information and lots of color. These activities provide another chance for your students to learn something more about each state and right across the curriculum. Look at the first activity for the state of Arizona. It says, prepare your own diamondback poppers. Use chicken because rattlesnake tastes like chicken anyway. Students might have fun making this recipe at home with family or friends. You might also have participating students journal about their experience or research and write an essay about the diamondback rattlesnake. In Level 8, Discovery Time follows the exciting theme of traveling the world. Students will get the chance to travel to multiple destinations around the world while taking on various roles or perspectives to assist them in completing a quest. For example, they may be asked to imagine themselves as a historian studying the ancient Mayan culture and ruins in Central America, or experience being a scuba diver studying aquatic life in the most popular diving site in Indonesia. Let's take a closer look. Discovery Destination 3 is the country of Belize. Notice that the card shows a map of the country's location, a list of Quigley's quests, and some tips to help the students successfully complete their chosen task. Oh yeah, this is Quigley Shurley. In each level, he helps students with study skills. In Level 8, he also creates the challenging and interesting quests for students to complete. Let's check out Quigley's quests for this destination. Quest 1. You are a historian. Quigley wants you to travel to Central America to the country of Belize. You will spend 7 days exploring the fascinating Mayan ruins and the Mayan culture. Write a magazine article of your activities and discoveries as you explore the Mayan ruins and the Mayan culture. Quest 2. Research the causes of the fall of the Mayan civilization. Discuss these causes in cooperative groups if possible. Track their demise. Contemplate the implications of their downfall to modern civilization. Quest 3. Write a diamante, quatrain, or free verse poem about the Mayan society. Quest 4. Write a narrative or play about being a Mayan teenager. Students will choose one or more quests to complete. The quests offer some creative variety for writing, as well as an opportunity to differentiate instruction based on the level of the student. Tips that assist the student in the structure of their writing are always provided. There is an important student tip that reminds students of 2 details. 1, they're reminded about available resources to use when exploring their destination. And 2, a specific block of time, called Discovery Share Time, is provided in a different lesson so that they may present their findings to their classmates orally or by preparing a written report to go in their class booklet titled Traveling the World. Discovery Time writing can be creatively woven into your regular schedule. I've come up with some ideas to get you thinking. Set certain days of the week, let's say at lunch on Tuesdays and Thursdays, for students to opt out of their recess to work on their Discovery Time activity in your classroom. Call it something like Dine In with Discovery Time. You might even decide to have a day where you use an afternoon block called the Power Block to allow students to work on specific assignments that they need to catch up on, including their Discovery Time activity. You may also choose to allow a student's finished Discovery Time writing piece to be used as a trade or makeup work in order to bring up a low-scoring grade or a missed assignment. Attach a clever name to it like Discovery Time Trade Route. Maybe you'd like to create a designated Discovery Time workspace that is peaceful and quiet, that also replicates a coffee shop atmosphere. Call it the Explorer's Corner. The space would be special so that only 1 or 2 students could work on their Discovery Time task when they finished all other classwork. A special table covered with a tablecloth and a desk lamp could be set up in an inviting corner of your classroom. The ideas are endless, really. Shurley English students aren't intimidated by the complexity of writing expectations. On a test or when it comes to discovery time, because they are equipped with the right tools. As you can see, teaching the subject of writing is not simply about grammar and capitalization and punctuation rules. It's about the obligation you have to give your students enough practice in the writing process so that they get the chance to own their language so deeply that they can express their thoughts and feelings for all purposes with competence and confidence. Not just for the year they are with you, but for the rest of their lives. That concludes our presentation. I want to thank you for attending this edition of the Shurley English Workshop Series. We encourage you to subscribe to our YouTube channel to view all of our language arts instructional videos. For more information about our curriculum, please visit us at www.shurley.com.